that one, don't you? Maybe by the last one we'll be really good. We'll be ready to go into a choir. How is everybody? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Great!
We're great.
Yay! Okay. Today I want to talk to you about the seventh principle, natural law, and here's a mouthful for you, the Nicomachean ethics. Now I see some puzzled faces, and that's okay because I had them too before I understood what it was. Throughout our principles we see a lot of reference to natural law, correct? And I was wondering, and maybe some of you have as well, where that term came from and how we've evolved to understand natural law. Because natural law, as we understand it today, is the foremost constant in our lives, right? In other words, it works for everybody in the same way, in the same fashion, all the time. So where did this term and this understanding of natural law come from? And how does it relate to the seventh principle? Well, the seventh principle, that we affirm that we make our own happiness or unhappiness as we live in accordance with natural law or not, right? That's a paraphrase, of course. So that's a reflection to me of the law of consequence. You live in accordance and it works, and you live in discordance and it doesn't work, right? Sir Isaac Newton, in his third principle, if you will, understood this concept as that for every action there's an equal and conflicting reaction, if you will. Okay? So, and that's also paraphrased. The term natural law is kind of a shortened version of where it first came about. Now, let me give you a little background. It was first known as the laws of nature, and the first place that we saw this in the written form was through the works of Aristotle. Aristotle was a prolific writer. He was born 384 BC. So it was a couple of years before I was born, but not too far back. So Aristotle was a philosopher. Through his study of biology, though. Now, he came from his father. His father's name was Nicomachean, and Nicomachean was a doctor to the royalty of the day back then. So when Aristotle was born, he was born to a family that was able to provide him with the finest of educations and so on. And so he studied under Plato for some 20 years before he broke off on his own. And eventually he opened his own school, which he named after the god of Apollo, Lycaeus. That was the name of the god of Apollo, and he named the school the Lyceum. So that's a little bit of interesting information there. And in this works that he created, which is over 200 volumes, it's called the Nicomachean Ethics, and named after his father, if you will, Nicomachean. Now, part of Aristotle's studies is he would have been known back in our terminology, he would have been known as a biologist. Because what he did was he studied the species, all the species on the earth. He studied nature. And in that study, he found what is the best and most excellent depiction of that species in relation to the environment. So he took it from the point of excellence and filtered it down into the greater, the closer we get to that point of excellence, the more in alignment with the laws of nature, which is where we first found these writings, is in this Nicomachean ethics, the term he used, the laws of nature. The closer we are in alignment with that, the closer we are to that point of excellence, and everything filters from there. We see this also in medicine today, where we don't evaluate medicine from the worst case and try and find what the best case scenario is in a physical body, right? We look at the physical body from its point of excellence in whatever species, and then evaluate it from that point going in the opposite direction, right? We don't evaluate the worst case and then figure what the excellence is. We go from the point of excellence on down to, okay, you're out of alignment to this degree, you know, based on whatever discomfort or dis-ease you may have. So this is the way that Aristotle looked at things, and in his biological studies, he went on to expand it into the human race, mankind as he called it back then. Today we call it humanity, to be politically correct. And what he found was that the ultimate goal of any species, and in particular the human species, because our point of excellence and our meaningful purpose on this earth is to demonstrate to the greatest point of our excellence, a term that he called rationality. We're thinkers. That's what we are. That's what we do best, is think. Other species are designed to do other things. For instance, a badger does very well at digging, right? A wolf does very well at working with his pack and hunting and so on. So as a species, our best space is in the space of rationality, which is in, we are great thinkers. And as a sidebar, if we don't necessarily have something to think about, we're really good at making stuff up. And we do that on a real consistent basis, right? So even things that are innate objects, such as a hammer. Now, a hammer could be used for, let's say, an example that was given was in this writing, this Nicomachean ethics, that a hammer could be used to remove a staple. However, it's best suited to nailing a nail, right? Or a flute could be used as a hammer, but it's not very effective. It's better used in the form of making music. So there are points of excellence, is what I'm saying. And our point of excellence is rationality. Now, what's the greatest of the rationality that the human race can achieve? According to Aristotle, our purpose and our goal is to achieve happiness. That is our purpose and our goal. The where we, I guess, drift away from that point of excellence becomes in what constitutes that happiness. Because happiness for me is one thing and happiness for you is another, right? But is it the happiness in and of itself, where Aristotle gets kind of into the intricacies of happiness, is it the means by which we gain the happiness that we're evaluating, or is it the happiness itself? In other words, let's say, for instance, two good examples of this might be going on a diet and accumulating money. So let's look at going on a diet. It's a lot of fun, and it makes me very happy when I can sit down and eat a whole chocolate cake, right? And it makes me very happy to be able to do that. But the consequence of that, if I do that every day, and if I achieve that, what do we call it today, instant gratification of eating that entire chocolate cake every day, what's going to happen? Eventually, I'm going to pay the consequences of poor health, right? So there's instant gratification, and then there's delayed gratification. And we make those decisions by the choices that we make, whether or not we want. The instant gratification is instant happiness that is very short-lived. The delayed gratification is happiness that has a more of a perpetual action to it, okay? So, yeah, it's fun to eat a whole bag of potato chips, and it would make me very happy to be able to do that. But I also know that if I go on a different kind of a diet and I eat more vegetables and some of the things that are good for me, no, I don't have that instant gratification, but long term, will I achieve that happiness, that inner peacefulness, that gain that comes with practicing delayed gratification? And ultimately, which one is going to make me happier? Okay? And these are the choices that we make. There's no, in his works, Aristotle doesn't say, do this, do that, do the next thing. He only points out that if you do this, then there are consequences. And we know that, right? We know that through natural law. What I find very interesting about the seventh principle, and what I had a hard time understanding with concern to that, was that it begins with, we affirm the moral responsibility of individuals. And I often wondered when I first started studying spiritualism, how does this relate to morality? I mean, I get that it relates to natural law, that we make our unhappiness or unhappiness as we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. But what about the moral aspect of this? Well, this is found, and this came about through the works of Aristotle when he used his understanding to explain all of this to us in the Nicomachean ethics, the works that he did. And so, in our Declaration of Principles, we can see a direct correlation from his work, which was back in, well, he was born in 384 BC and had 20 years to that, which goes backwards, right? So it'd be 364 BC. somewhere around there if he was 20 years old or older. A direct correlation between our Declaration of Principles and his works in this testament that he made towards principled living, if you will. So that's where morality and ethics came into play, and he called it nature's laws, or the natural laws, if you will, the laws of nature. And his relation was from nature, as opposed to the laws of justice, which he called were man-made laws. Okay, so that's how he differentiated between the natural laws, which were the laws of the species, of all species, including us, because that's what we are, is a species on this earth plane, and man-made laws, the laws of justice. And that's how he differentiated between them. He called them the laws of nature. So I hope you found this as interesting as I did. I thought that this was very enlightening, and it brought clarity to, or brings clarity for me, to why our seventh principle reads as it does. Now, if our goal is happiness, ultimately, I look at it almost like peeling an onion. There are layers upon layers upon layers. Is it a means to the happiness, or is it happiness in and of itself? Going back to our diets, the diet is the means to the happiness. Being on a diet isn't necessarily fun, right? It doesn't make me happy to be on a diet, but it is a means to the happiness that I know is going to happen somewhere down the line. If your goal is to have a lot of money, money in and of itself is pretty much useless. You can't eat it. You can't build a house out of it. You can't sleep on it. It's not very comfortable. I mean, maybe if you had enough of it, but it's still a bunch of paper, right? But what happens when we put action behind the money, when we turn money into an object? You say, well, money would make me happy. No, money is the means to the happiness, okay? Money doesn't make you happy, but what you can purchase with the money makes you happy, right? So let's say, for instance, money would make me happy because I could go buy a car. Well, does a car make you happy? No, you're kind of getting the idea, right? Car doesn't make you happy. Car does nothing for you. Absolutely nothing for you until what? Until you put action to it, right? Until you actually get in the car and utilize it for its intended purpose, which is a mode of transport that gets you from point A to point B. To have a car sitting in your driveway does what for you? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So you see, you go from each layer, and this is how Aristotle looked at it, when he finally came to the conclusion that the purpose of mankind, as he called it, the purpose of humanity, the ultimate goal, is to achieve happiness. He did it layer by layer by layer. He kept peeling off the layers and saying, well, does this make us happy? No, it is a means to the happiness. Well, what does that achieve? Well, it achieves, the money achieves a car. Does the car make us happy? No, it's a means to a happiness. And so on and so forth. And he kept going and going and going until he reached the core of his philosophical understanding of the purpose of mankind, is to be happy. Anybody have too much happiness? Not so much, right? But I bet that each one of you, at some point or another in your life, has felt that in the deep inner core of your being, even if it was for a fleeting moment, that great sense of peace and contentment based on a choice that you made. That happiness, that's what we seek. That's what we're after. And we can get there. We can get there on a more continual basis if we make better choices for ourselves. Every day we go out, from the minute you open your eyes, you make choices. You make a choice whether or not you want to take a shower, whether you want to brush your teeth, whether you want to wash your face, whether you want to come to church, whether you want to stay home, what you want to wear, who you want to talk to, where you want to be. We make choices. And if we live consciously, those choices will indeed bring us to that state of happiness if we make proper choices. And living is all about trial and error, isn't it? Oh, we make this choice, doesn't turn out so well, doesn't make us real happy. What do? Back up, make another choice. Turn it around. And that's the blessing of our ability to be able to do that. If we go in one direction and it doesn't work, we're able to turn it around and go in another direction, which leads me to the eighth principle. The doorway to reformation is never closed against any soul, here or hereafter. So live as consciously as you can. Make the best choices that you can based on happiness with longevity rather than instant gratification. And know that if a choice that you made isn't working out as well as you would like it to work out, that you always have an opportunity to make another choice. I wish you all that wonderful core happiness and that peace that's available to each and every one of us. God bless you.